Okay, we're back. Part two. A little bit of fat face from Dennis, but y'all can hear what I'm saying. And if it sounds a little different than I'm saying, it sounds what I'm saying.
As long as you don't start drooling on
I may start drooling, but it's okay.
You need to have some like rags and things.
Nah, that's what the hoodie's for. So, yep. Back, second half, episode 35. Tiambu Kawan.
And I'm Yula.
So we left off, you were talking about your parents, what you discovered with your recent conversations with your mom.
Yeah, she surprised me and very calmly said that she probably doesn't even know my dad really well, and they've been together for 50 plus years.
Why do you think she said that?
Because he doesn't talk.
Right.
Like he never talks about anything that is non-factual, emotional. He just doesn't have. I've seen him a few times when he needed to be able to make emotional decisions. When my grandma was dying, he wasn't able to do it at all.
Right.
And he just shuts down. There's no mechanism that he has to start conversing.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. And it's just,
Yeah, I mean that's like that contributes to my understanding of my whole story and how it's actually different from what my perception of it has been for many years.
Right. So why don't you, as you talk to the people over there, talk about what your perception was a little bit of your childhood life and what the reality was, and that will probably be a good segue into what your narrative was with us versus what the width of it all.
So I always thought that my life was really super easy. My dad was very optimistic and positive, and my mom was just naturally negative. It was always easier for me to hang out with my dad than with my mom. And that's what my perception was until literally a few years ago. And my conversation with my mom this week was the first time when I had thoughts of, mom has had a difficult life.
Right.
She was in a circumstance where she wasn't allowed to be who she really is or who she wanted to be. And that was just circumstantial. So she never let herself be that.
Right.
And my dad was never in a circumstance where he needed to change how he was from just growing up. So he never learned how to get deeper than just the surface level, the material level, and stuck to his comforts. It's an interesting, I think, thinking about it and having other experiences with men from that same culture, I actually feel bad for them. I realized that I grew up with in the system where financial stability and how much men can provide for women was the measure of their responsibility and success.
Right.
And for a lot of people that it still is. But when you see them in the moment of crisis and you understand how little ability they have to help themselves by seeing that there is more to what they actually contribute to family and other people around them than financial stability.
Right.
That just crushes them.
Right, because their primary tool has been money.
Yeah, you take that away and they really can't rise above it. It's like literally guts them. And that's the hard part. Like that's when I start feeling bad for them. Whereas before it was like you judge people by what, like you used to do that, right? Their
Right.
financial success is a measure of how successful they are in life.
Right. And that goes into, we won't go too deep into it, but you
It's a
know,
separate topic.
separate topic. But when you grow up in Western civilization, a Eurocentric civilization where spirituality and culture is pushed down, and monetary and material success and metrics are pushed up, then you grow up thinking that material is everything. The people who have money are like magicians and they're above everything and they've got it all figured out. And that's, when you grow up without money, you grow up thinking that a lot, from my end. And then it took a while to emancipate myself. And I think you still work on it. It still feels like, if you're not providing, if you're not hustling 24/7, if you're not about that grind, about that money, that you're somehow not as valuable as a contributor to the family or to your whatever it is. And it took a while for me to help myself understand like that my definition of success does not have to be theirs.
Yep.
But when you're detached from spirituality and you're in societies that really suppress that and not only suppress it but devalue it, almost make you feel bad, and as if you were pursuing that, then you go, okay, all I need is to be smart, or if not smart, rich. Like rich trumps smart. It seems like you could be smart and have no money, but if you're rich, people just assume you're smart and they assume you got it all figured out.
Well, I mean, look who we have at the top.
Right.
And it really is really, we always say, all right, well, let's see what those people do when you take their money away.
Right.
I've seen it, and it's not pretty. Like it's really they break down to the point where you have to hold their hands and
Right.
be like, you will be okay. That this is not death.
Right.
Like you will be okay. We love you not for what you provide to us financially,
Right.
but because of who you are. It's hard it's hard feeling that you can't do it for yourself.
Right. So how does that? So now you've at this. We were talking in the first part of this episode, before we got to the second half, about being able to amend your narrative once you have new information to apply to the past, reflect. So now that you have this new information about what your mom and dad's relationship was like, and what your perception of your childhood was with them versus how it is, what does that feel like? What's the process of amending that?
I think there's different layers, like for me within my immediate family, for the purpose of my conversation with my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom basically gave me an opening to talk to her about the real stuff that you and I talk about, right? It showed me that she actually understands that the value is not in what anyone makes financially,
Right.
but in, are you able to just sit there and have a normal conversation and share
Right.
whatever emotional hardships you have, so that's on their level. Whether or not I'm ever able to talk to my dad about it, that's
Right.
and I always try, and there's always like I can probably go a little further than most other people, but not that far.
Right.
And for myself, I think that looking back, the whole story of how I was raised, what I thought was right and wrong, what I thought was my responsibility to myself and to others, was not very rounded, because there was no, anything that you do over here will affect everything that you do over here.
Right.
When you don't have the whole, no one knows what you're doing over here, but the universe does, and your karma is circular.
Right.
And things happen over here because of what you're
Things
doing over there,
Right.
even though you're so good at keeping them separate that not only no one suspects that you have this other part, but you forget that you have that other part.
Right.
I know. So I think that that's the biggest the biggest realization to me is that no, everything is connected.
Right.
I can't create something separate in this other corner of my life
Right.
and assume that if I only keep it physically separate, it will not affect anything else that I do.
Right. Right.
You know, and like you and I talked last night about things like how much this whole uh, period of my life where I kept things separate
Mm-hmm.
has affected me to the point where now I'm like, no, no, Tion, I don't care if you don't want to know. You don't
Right.
really need to know because I need to make sure that you know.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know, and it's gonna take a while to, to even the whole thing out.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I mean it's it's not what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas type stuff.
No.
And I would always have that, being when I was tour managing and being on tour and was seeing some of the people who were in committed monogamous relationships wilding out there and stuff like that.
That happens on tour?
I know, crazy,
Shit,
right?
what? What tours did you go on?
And they just, they kind of just move as if it's like, that's over here.
Right.
It's not at home. It's in
Right.
Iowa and wherever. Right. And I'm just like, man, I'm like, but your karma travels. And that's just how I've brought up to believe. My mom would always talk about sometimes when you've done wrong and you've done some dirty stuff, you may not pay for it, but your children might pay for it.
Yeah.
And she would talk about legacy karma. I didn't fully get it, but all I remembered was don't do fucked up shit. Minimize doing fucked up shit because it will come back to you some way, shape, or form.
It's not even, I think that's where like the deeper problems are in maybe the ways that I was raised and how, people in my part of the world think I didn't look at what I was doing as a fucked up shit, right? I'm like, no, I see the benefit to it, right?
Right.
I'm just keeping it separate so it does not, hurt Tion.
Right.
Right? But then I didn't look at, yeah, but you're actually technically lying. And that lying part is what's messing with your other stuff.
Right.
Whatever your reasons for it are,
right.
That's irrelevant.
Right.
The fact that there is a continuous big lie in your life,
right,
that's what's leaking.
Right.
It's not the facts that are leaking. It's not anything else. It's not like it didn't change my relationship with you.
Right.
Everything was fine, and it's interesting how for years or for the last, I don't know, 5 years, I started feeling like we should be like further, like more settled financially.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like that, I started feeling that. I don't understand why is it that it's almost where it should be, but it's not, like it's like a couple degrees off.
Right.
And it felt like it's going in the right direction, but it's not quite clicking.
Right.
And then when we like opened the whole thing up and we started going through the real process of cleaning it out, I'm like, that's what was missing. Like that was leaking into, lo and behold, I think financial part of our life.
Right. Right.
And I can't prove anything, but it really feels like that area was messing with whatever it was that needed to start clicking in our life to really solidify that, in general I knew we were on the right track, but it just wasn't getting traction.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, we like to believe everything is related. Everything is in spirals. Your physical, your mental, your health, mental health, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, your karma, the energy you output, the thoughts you think, your balance between your ego and your spirit, and all these things. So there can very much be a time that, since all of it's a team, you could be doing mentally the right things, you could be doing physically the right things, but if you're not spiritually doing the right things, then it clogs.
Yeah.
You know, if the balance is out of whack, then the flow is not going to work. It's going to be out of balance. And, you know, they all play a role. Sometimes you meet people who are, they look successful, they have the right look, they speak great, they work out great, they have their diet fucking vegan, super good, everything like that. But then you step back and you look at their life and the way it's flowing, and you're like, ooh, like something's just not. And then you spend a little more time with them, and you pick up on the energy, and you start going, ooh, and you start feeling like a lot of this is the motive feels like it's not right. Like the ego is pushing this whole lifestyle. It's not being pushed for a betterment, or there's some things, and sometimes it can be that, you know. So it's definitely all intertwined. But like we're talking about, if you were raised where karma and any connection with the universe or energy is like mumbo jumbo dumb,
Yeah,
it's
that
not.
didn't.
Then truly you're only dealing with metrics of material. And technically, if you're only dealing with metrics of material, if it's over there,
Yeah.
it's fully over there, unless my mouth leaks it or I'm sloppy.
Yeah.
You know, and so the goal is like just don't be sloppy. But you know, whenever we summon our, like most of the time we know we're doing something that's not quite right because we get that feeling. A lot of times our mind will rationalize it out.
Like that's your
I mean,
mind. And I'm telling you, by the look of like, you know, our hot tub experience, like I really, it was so separated that it wasn't like in my mind going, yeah, but you're doing something wrong.
Right, but perhaps I would suggest though, it was probably because you were primarily in your mind.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of times when we go into our narrative or telling a story or reactionary lying or reactionary adjusting the truth, if we stop before we do that, we call timeout like on a basketball team. You call timeout, and then you get all your team together. You know, you get your ego, you get your logic, you get your all these things, and your spirit together, and then you go, okay, so, and just even that second of just doing that and going, what do you think? It changes everything. But most of us, if we don't ever think to ask what our mind, ego thinks, what our intuition feels, and these things, we just go, the mind and ego will just keep going.
Yeah.
And it's momentous.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, the mouth of the mind starts saying shit that the spirit's like, I knew, but you never asked me, and I'm humble as a rock. The ego, the spirit never yells. It's always very quiet. That's why you have to meditate and find things quiet to connect with it. So the mind likes mode is like a machine. And so, you know, but it makes perfect sense that it's not to say that you didn't know.
Right.
Or maybe it is safe that you didn't know, because know is based upon knowledge.
I didn't feel it.
But in your whole being, you knew, but you weren't accessing the parts that had the information.
Yeah.
You know. So.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. So that kind of runs us into, you know, that whole, we thought that we had closed the chapter of, you know, I had a 10-year super friendship with, that included sex that Tion didn't know about, with his super old school friend, mentor, friend. Right.
Me and him didn't have a sexual relationship.
No, you and him didn't have a sexual relationship. He and I did. And so that relationship basically blew up 3+ years ago, when I told Tion about it. You know, I didn't give him any heads up on, hey, I am about to tell Tion, or this is what's going on, and you know, I
did you determine the name of him so that way so people know you're not them, they, him, it?
Yeah, it's gonna be Brian.
Okay.
Right. So Brian and I had an agreement that was very explicit that I would not tell Tion, and if asked, I'm like, nope. That I don't know what
you're gonna take it to the grave.
Right. And you know, he trusted that that's what I was gonna do. I trusted that that's what I was gonna do. And then when you and I went deep, and it became apparent that it was my time to actually start telling the truth. And
Right.
the alternative was I was either going to tell the truth or we probably weren't going to be together. I was like, yeah, all right, here's the truth. I didn't give Brian any heads up. I actually like was off communication with him for probably some weeks before that.
Right.
Which was not usual for us. And then a few weeks after that, we were in, I went and just, showed up at his house and was like, hey, this is what happened. I told Tion. And understandably, that kind of,
shocked his
knocked
draw.
him out. Relationship between Tion, Brian, and I blew up, and that was that. Tion had asked me if what did I want to do about my relationship with Brian. I told him that I wasn't going to have it.
Right.
Wasn't going to continue it. And that was that. That was 3 years ago.
Did I give you any ultimatums?
Nope. You just asked me, and I took, I don't know, 5 minutes, and I, actually let my spirit tell me what would happen and how.
Right.
And I clearly saw that it was not, the value was in us, rebuilding our relationship. It was not in me continuing my relationship with Brian.
Right.
So, and that was that. And it was what it was. I emailed Brian twice over the 3-year period, and he never responded. And the last email I had sent him was probably 16 months ago.
Right, but so after it all came out, it didn't all come out.
No.
So this is about the narrative and telling the story. Is that the root came out, but then
the factual, we had sex.
Right,
but
it took several times of more information to come out, and more information to come out, and more information to come out, up to a couple years, maybe.
Yeah, it definitely took probably fully a year and a half, 2 years to get to the point where I could freely say, yeah, I really care about the dude, and our whole entire friendship was really cool, and our sexual relationship was really cool.
Right.
Like that took me a long time and at least 3 sets of approaches to be able to say it like that.
Right, and that's the caveat for, we'll continue, but this specific part, when you're trying to amend your past, or your partner is trying to amend their past, and you just, they drop a bomb on you, or you discover they lied and they tell you what happened, I've learned to go, give space, allow room for more to come out, allow it to be a process of cleansing, not one act of cleansing. Because what happens if you don't respect the process and allow it to take as long as it's going to take, you assume one time, oh, it's all done, it's all out, and that's it. So what happens is you sew it back up after that surgery. Then 2 or 3 weeks later, a month or two later, a year later, they go, oh man, there was more to that story, I need to tell you more. Then you go, how could you do that to me? How could it have happened? And you just go right through it. It wasn't even
like, in our situation, it wasn't even like that.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our situation. I'm saying just, it didn't happen in our situation because I knew and told myself, give room for her to get, this is a long process. It's not going to come out all overnight. And that's what my spirit said, just give it space. Expect her to fall on her face, or expect it to happen again, or expect it to take a while before she learns how to do it this way versus how she's done it in her life. And so for other couples, when I talk about it, it's like, give space, coming clean is a process. It is not a one-time thing. You don't just go to the bathroom, poop, and flush, and it's done. And a lot of times, our pain wants to hear that it's done, wants to believe that it's done, because it's too painful to be in that nuance, because you may be, I don't know when or what's going to happen. So it's really hard to be in that space. But I encourage people to be in that space and allow it to be a process. So that way, if they lied once and then they told you, they caught them or whatever, they caught you. Everybody should know it's a process. If I lied before, I'm probably going to lie again. And the reasons don't mean it's nefarious or deceitful complete as far as the intent. I'm working through something. And as long as you feel and know that I'm working through it as well as you're working through stuff, it may take a little bit longer than the one conversation.
It's I actually heard an unrelated podcast I was listening to today, and it had to do with racism and how white people, in this case it was white women, how they learn how to find their footing, in this whole how do I show I'm not a racist? What can I say? What can I not say? And then stepping into it, right? And saying something, and people look at you like, oh, that's nice how you can just be a casual racist. And that makes them feel really bad. And then this one woman said, she stepped into it, and then she went and fully apologized to the person and said, oh, that would never happen again. But then she, in the same conversation, like in the podcast, she's like, well, I'm sure it's going to happen again.
Right.
Because it's muscle memory. It's what we know, right? It's what we know for so long, and that's why we say it the way we say it. We do it the way we do it. We get caught into it. We feel really super bad about it.
Right.
Long enough for us to apologize and want to make sure that no one feels bad anymore. We move on. Chances are we're going to do it again.
Right.
If you're like me, like I really am super hard-headed, and I'm going to keep doing it until it clicks in me. You don't like making the same mistake twice because you don't like getting caught.
Right.
You would probably sit there and think for a long time, how can I prevent that from happening?
Right.
Me, I'm be like, oh, I got this.
Right.
And next time when it happens, I'm like, oh, I thought I got this, but no, I didn't get it.
Right.
And then I do it again, and I'm like, fuck, I really thought this time I really got it.
Right.
And it's after that, I'm like, all right, I have to do something different. I actually have to proactively prepare myself and train and start changing the muscles that I'm using.
Right.
But I have to fail so many times.
Right. And, and it's a process, just the same way, we use analogies to Golden State Warriors because we're out here in Cali, in the Bay. Draymond has gotten technical fouls, and it's cost him games and maybe even some say the championship. And he probably was like, my bad, I got this, I got it, don't worry about it. It's not going to happen again.
Yep.
Later on next year, whatever heat of the moment, it happens again. Steph Curry, turnovers, throwing the ball behind your back, doing that. And he's probably like, all right, coach, I'm sorry, not going to happen again.
Yep.
And that's what happens is.
And we sincerely mean that.
Right. But the reality is, it happens again.
Yeah.
There's a series of emotional things or knee jerks or circumstances that make us go into our impulse, our reaction mode.
That's blink.
Yeah, just blink. Like we don't realize we're doing it, but we just mental and emotional muscle memory, just boom.
There's that Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, that talks actually about that.
Right, about how we make split-second decisions and how the way we make decisions is very different than how we think we make decisions.
Right, exactly.
So give space. If someone's trying to come clean, if you believe that they're really genuinely trying to come clean, tell yourself as a person who's receiving this, that's probably hurt, that's probably the one that feels betrayed, is if you love this person, you plan on really trying to work it out, give space. As hard as it is to just go, you know what? It might happen again, and it doesn't mean they're evil. It's a long process. Let me just use other metrics besides absolutes to see if they're really working on it. Yeah. From there, so
back to the story.
Yeah, so back to the story. Take a break. Hold on, we're going to take a little quick station identification. This is Black Russian Podcast episode 35,
Oh my
brought
God,
to you
look.
by
They have matching cups of tea.
by tea, and it hasn't dribbled down my face. So we appreciate you guys for listening. Part 4 of episode 35 coming up in 3, 2, 1.